getting back to the Seahawks, Aaron, you had a column, you and Seth Walder had a column on ESPN.com last week, kind of the final move that each team should be making before training camp gets here at the end of July. And for the Seahawks, you had them signing free agent guard Brandon Scherff, who is a multi-time All-Pro, has accomplished a lot in the NFL. He's 33 years old. What would a move like that do for the Seahawks offensive ceiling?
I mean, I think that it improves it because we think Scherff still has a good amount in the tank. He played well last year, so it's not like he's done. And obviously, what is the biggest question about the Seahawks right now? It's interior offensive line, right? You feel good about Sable, the rookie. But Oluwatimi, Christian Hayes, Anthony Bradford, it's all like a bunch of meh, right? So you bring in a really good veteran into that competition, and if he wins a job and then the better of those other three wins the other job, I think you're feeling better about your interior offensive line.
You have absolutely nailed the big roster question with the Seahawks, interior offensive line. The big kind of like existential question is, can they figure out quarterback, and is it Sam Darnold? What's your honest, you will not hurt anyone's feeling, we're new to Sam. What's your honest take on what you think about Sam Darnold?
I think that we will look back and see last year as a little bit of an outlier in his career, but that he also is nowhere near as bad as he looked when he was with the Jets. And while he doesn't have the track record of Kevin O'Connell as far as boosting quarterbacks, I think that Kubiak is a good offensive coordinator. What he did at the beginning of the year before everybody got hurt for the Saints was good. I think the bigger issue for Darnold is that he goes from having maybe the best receiver in the game and a very good wide receiver too, and a very good tight end to, some talent, but nothing like Justin Jefferson.
You speak of that wide receiver talent here in Seattle. Cooper Kupp, the biggest addition made in the offseason, obviously a household name to NFL fans, but when you look at his game right now, age 32, how much do you think he has left in that tank?
He slowed down last year. It was pretty clear. I don't know whether he can get back to the player that he was or even almost the player that he was. And that's obviously a bit of a worry because it's not just the question of whether Kupp can get back. It's the lack of depth behind him. I think that very few teams in the NFL would want to be starting Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That doesn't mean he's not a useful player, but I think very few teams would want him to be a starter. And then after that, it's like Jake Bobo and a couple of rookies, and who are these guys? And, Steven Sims, who's a kick returner, and there are depth issues. So if Kupp doesn't do it, there's nobody to replace him.
I have a question that's going to take us a little bit off the rails, but we're getting into territory familiar for you. We're talking stats. And we will get back to the Seahawks and a look around the NFL and some other news items. But we had a question early last week, Aaron, and it was from a listener, and we had been talking all day about MLB's AL MVP race and WAR and whether or not WAR is fairly applicable to catchers in quite the same way. Anyways, someone texted in and said, hey, I'm a massive NFL fan, not a huge baseball fan. What's the football equivalent to WAR? And we were like, yeah, there might be AV or some random things, but I could not for the life of me think of something that was equivalent because football is so fundamentally different. The closest I got was saying, I guess maybe you look at situations, in which case DVOA, something you created, would be the closest thing. But I wanted to throw you the same question and say, how would you best try to decide a player's value in football?
I love my stat.
It's a great stat. That's the first one I thought of.
I don't do for every player, right? I don't have individual DVOA for offensive linemen or defensive linemen. I will mention that both Pro Football Focus and Sports Info Solutions do have a version of something that they call wins above replacement or WAR. Now, the PFF one in particular is based on a lot of scouting grades rather than necessarily stats. but it kind of agrees with the eye test for the most part. And one of the things that WAR shows in football is just how much quarterbacks are so much more important than any other position. There are very few players that reach 1.0 wins above replacement in either formula from either company that are not quarterbacks.
I'm looking at some over-under win totals, and the Seahawks right now are like 7.5 and 8.5 for some other companies. And I want to know if the Seahawks eclipse that 7 to 8 win range this season, what do you think has to go right for them to eclipse that win total?
The most realistic idea of how the Seahawks will suddenly become a really good team is that Mike Macdonald's defense totally gels, right? Improved in the second half of last year. They were like the number 11 defense or something in my numbers. Better in the second half of the year. Macdonald's defense with the Ravens improved in the second half of his first year. That took a big step forward in the second year. If the Seahawks take a similar step forward, you feel very good about how this team will do. Obviously, if the offense, if Darnold plays as well as he did last year, that's good too. But listen, Darnold last year was like 15th among quarterbacks. Like, he wasn't great. It was just that he was way better than he'd been in the past, and also their defense was really good. So the best case scenario for the Seahawks looks similar to last year's Vikings. The defense is really good, really well coordinated, and the quarterback is a little bit above average.
How would you describe Mike Macdonald's defense?
Complicated.
How so?
Pass rushers not necessarily coming from where you think they're going to come. Obviously like Devin Witherspoon, for example. But the Ravens, where he was before, and the Seahawks are somewhat similar in that you look at them and you're not like, the outside linebackers are the highlight of this roster. I mean, that's not to say anything negative about like Nwosu or Mafe, or now that they have DeMarcus Lawrence, but you don't like. There's no like Myles Garrett. They do a lot of it with the coach kind of scheming it up. And I mean, obviously Leonard Williams is dangerous, but they do a lot of it with the coach kind of scheming it up.
Aaron, can a defense become the best in the league when it doesn't have, maybe in a classic sense, like superstars on that side of the ball? When you look at the Seahawks defense, there are a lot of really good players, but maybe nobody that would make an all-pro team right now.
Again, may I introduce you to last year's Minnesota Vikings? They were the number two defense in my numbers. Yeah. And they're very similar, right? You look at the Vikings roster, and you're like, who here is a top 10 player at their position? Maybe Andrew Van Ginkel?
Yeah.
I mean, has he played last year? Yeah. But like going into last year, would you have thought Andrew Van Ginkel is a top 10 edge rusher? No. Stephon Gilmore, a couple years ago, sure. Not anymore. And by the way, he's not on that team anymore. So I think that is the similar. I mean, the Seahawks have a better argument for having players that are actually in the top 10 at their position, Leonard Williams and Devin Witherspoon.
Devin plays in the slot a ton when you're looking at outside corner and the weaknesses. Am I wrong to assume you don't have a ton of faith that Rick Woolen can take a massive step, or that you're looking at the other side? What are you seeing with that group?
Other side. I'm looking at the other side. I think Joby, we don't know really what he is. I think Shaq Griffin, I don't know how much he has left. Looking at their depth chart, there's like a guy named Nehemiah Pritchett who was a rookie last year. I don't know anything about that guy. Sean Charles did nothing really when he was with the Saints. So it's not Rick Woolen that I'm worried about. It's definitely not Devon Witherspoon that anybody is worried about. It's the other spot. And Minnesota, like I mentioned, is something similar because Baltimore has something similar because they have maybe Awuzie and maybe Alexander if he can stay healthy, and then who knows.
Aaron, you look at this NFC right now, and it feels like the Eagles are the clear-cut favorite in that conference to make a repeat trip back to the Super Bowl. Who is the biggest challenger, you think, to that throne that they're currently holding?
Here's what I would say about the Eagles. Their offense was not as good as you think it was last year. It was like at the edge of the top 10 during the regular season. And defense tends to regress, and they have lost a lot of talent. I do not think the Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC. Are they one of the really good teams? Yes. I still think that the Detroit Lions with a healthy defense are the team to beat in the NFC. Aiden Hutchinson back, he was playing like, if not the best edge rusher in the league, the second best edge rusher in the league when he got hurt last year. They do have a tough schedule, but that is a good offense and a really good defense, and I think that they are the team to watch.
I was dreading, Aaron, that you would say, hey, sneak attack, it's actually the Rams. I think they're much better than their schedule would indicate or their results would indicate last year. What can you tell me about LA? Obviously, a divisional opponent for Seattle, heavily favored to win the division once again for fair reason with that defensive line. But what did you see? Give us a little bit of insight here.
Our projections have them a little lower than the conventional wisdom.
Great.
There's definitely a good chance that our projections are wrong.
Never.
I mean, for one thing, the defense we do see regressing a little bit. You don't know exactly how good those guys are after the 1 year. The other is Devontae Adams. It's interesting. Statistically, has not been great the last few years. But obviously, if you look at the quarterbacks throwing him the ball, there's an explanation for it. So just who is he at the age of 33? Is Devontae Adams this awesome X who's going to come in and revolutionize their offense? Or is he going to give them like not that much more than what they got from Demarcus Robinson? I think it's an interesting question. The team I would be worried about is San Francisco, which was better than you think last year and super injured and is much healthier now and has the easiest schedule in the league.
Aaron, another recent column of yours was the all-quarter century team in the NFL, and the Seahawks were well represented. I believe 3 players made the all-quarter century team over the last 25 years. I think it was Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner. There was a potential 4th that got a lot of people up here talking that did not make the team, and that was Walter Jones at left tackle. So, Aaron, the floor is yours. Care to explain why Walter Jones was not named a starter on the all-quarter century team?
Yeah, I think we had him on our practice squad of honorable mention guys. He didn't have as many All-Pros and Pro Bowls as Trent Williams and Joe Thomas. That's not to diss, he obviously had a really great career, but we just felt like he didn't come in quite as high as Trent Williams and Joe Thomas. We looked with the offensive linemen in particular because you don't have stats for those guys from the Walter. You have some charting stats now and next-gen stats now, but you don't have that for Walter Jones and Jonathan Ogden. We looked a lot at sort of how were they viewed at the time. In other words, how many All-Pros, how many Pro Bowls did they make?
What was my last question for you, unrelated to the Seahawks, but related to this piece, which was a fun read, and we got so many conversations from it. What was maybe the biggest name that you heard in response from fans, whether a pushback or a snub or someone that they were confused about? Like, what did you find was a common thread in feedback?
It's not even close. People thought we were insane to put Priest Holmes on the team.
It was
rather
so
than
fun.
LaDainian Tomlinson or Adrian Peterson. Priest Holmes was so good for 3 years. So incredibly good. Like, people forget how good he was as both a rusher and a receiver. It was the beginning of the century, right? So you don't remember it as well. And maybe he didn't run over guys as much as like Adrian Peterson, so you don't remember. But Adrian Peterson, mostly it was like that 1 year. Holmes had 3 years like that.
I'm glad that you're standing on business with it. I really am. You're 10 toes down on this one, Aaron. He is FTN Fantasy's Aaron Schatz. You're awesome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. And folks, the FTN Football Almanac comes out in about a week and a half. You can pre-order it at ftnfantasy.com/almanac.
You heard the man. Go do it. Thanks, Aaron.
All right.